baby, we're back. And we're back for good now. And there's a lot of news to cover. Now, with Epic announcing trios this past weekend at FNCS Global Championships, that means now the struggle to find a new trio immediately starts. We all know how much trios embraces snaking. We see a lot of trios splitting, finding new duos, stuff like that every single week. It's a primetime gamer when it comes to finding teammates and people looking for other teammates that fit with them. So we're going to have a lot of swaps around in the upcoming 4 months going into the FNCS. Now, with FNCS trios probably being in about 4 months, it makes no sense for people to actually be looking for trio now, but it seems like all the pros are so excited that we've had a few people tweeting about their new trios, and we had a few new people also talking about who they might be interested in finding with trios. So let's go through all the rumors and the confirmed trios and go from there. Now, starting off with some of the teams that are actually looking for a trio that aren't confirmed yet. We saw Veno make a tweet this past week saying that he's looking for a trio with either Quezy in EU or NA, or together with Clix. Now, it is interesting that a lot of these trio options are looking at potentially finding people in NA or EU. So a lot of these guys are now looking at multi-region options. I don't know why exactly everyone's so passionate to go back to NA. Not a lot of people want to come to EU, but from what I've heard is that when you move to EU, you have to live in Frankfurt, and Frankfurt honestly isn't the most beautiful city to live in. But when you live in NA and you play NA FNCS, then you're going to be living in Dallas, Texas, and that's pretty much where all the pros are living at. So you have a lot of friends there, a lot of interactions. It's a lot more fun of a city than some industrial town in Frankfurt. So we see Veno and Quezy potentially looking for one as a trio. For me, the teammate that makes the most sense in this situation is obviously going to be Thomas HD. Veno was playing duo cash games with Thomas this past week. Quezy obviously just got second at Global Championships together with Quezy. It makes the most sense. But the fact that they're actually looking for one still, and it's not a done deal with Thomas, is a little bit interesting. I wonder if they're trying to see what options they can find in North America first and just waiting before they confirm somebody, because maybe they just really want to live there or they really want to compete there. But we're seeing some of the NA trio options. It seems like it might be a lock as to who wins the FNCS in NA. So going to that lock, it's obviously the one that everybody's talking about. Peterbot, Pollo, and Cold are apparently a confirmed trio that will be playing the next true FNCS in the future. Now, honestly, if you look at that name, that is absolute fragging ability to the maximum. NA already has the issue of having a lack of fraggers, right? You don't have many fraggers, and now they're taking one more fragger off the market by taking Cold within that trio already. So honestly, if there's any trio that we can see from now that is a guaranteed lock to at least win one FNCS next season, it's probably going to be Peterbot, Pollo, and Cold. Now, obviously, there's a lot of discussion whether or not Peterbot and Pollo are going to continue their dominance. Obviously, once you've gotten a second, first, it's kind of hard to justify grinding again, but maybe they're looking for that perfect year once more. It's also going to be very obviously dependent on the meta, right? With a duo like Peterbot and Pollo, they dominated because they were able to alpha draw spots uncontested, and you know, obviously with medallion season, the mythical weapons being in the game, that made it so much better for them as a fragging and WKing duo to do well and dominate. If the meta completely shifts and we don't have overpowered draw spots, then the power of Peterbot and Pollo Code is a little bit less, but you can already tell that this is a trio that everyone's gonna be afraid of, and you probably don't want to be contesting in Chapter 6. The next trio that's been talked about is Swizzy, MrSavage, and Vana. That trio is confirmed. We're always going to be wondering about the powerhouse trio of the Russian-speaking players, and we have a lot of options, right? We have Malibuca, we got MrSavage, we got Vana, we got Swizzy. Those are the main four. Obviously, Malibuca is being left out of this trio now, so this is the fraggy Russian-speaking trio that's going to be announced. Now, it is curious why Malibuca has been left out of this trio. It does seem like he is, you know, very good friends with all three of these players, so it's interesting why he's been left out. But Swizzy, MrSavage, Vana is a dynamic trio. That is a trio that's going to get a lot of eliminations. They are very, very scary. Probably three of the best fighters and fraggers in EU combined, and it's definitely a trio that I think, if I had to be a betting man, would probably win an FNCS if everything goes right. But speaking of the person that's missing out, Malibuca, it's interesting that now that he's been left out, we have some other options for Malibuca, and it makes a lot of sense why he's been left out, because Seti tweeted this past week that they're going to be playing with the person they're going to be playing trios with this season, and guess who they played with? Seti played with Teak, and Cammy played with Malibuca. Now, Seti playing with Teak, I feel like might be a bit of a red herring. Obviously, if you don't know who Teak is, he is a 2-time DreamHack champion. He won FNCS trios with Cammy and Seti, probably one of the most dominant performances we've seen in a consistency trio in history. Honestly, one of the greatest Polish players to exist as well. Very, very good solo player, very good support player in that trio back in the days as well. And he was seen playing the game. Obviously, he played duo casca with Seti. Don't think they did too well because they didn't qualify to the finals, but it is interesting that he is playing the game again. And this is very similar to what a lot of ex-pros are doing. A lot of them are looking like they want to play the game again. Now, whether or not Seti, Teak, and Cammy is going to make a comeback, I really doubt, because it just leaves out Malibuca. Because if Malibuca isn't playing with a powerhouse Russian trio, then who the hell is he going to play with? So it makes the most sense that it's going to be Seti, Cammy, Malibuca. But obviously, I really do wonder what kind of role Malibuca has in this trio. Seti, Cammy obviously not known for the aggressiveness. Malibuca, I believe, is an IGL usually. So I am very curious to see what Malibuca slots into this trio. Is it the fragging power they need? It's not the off-spawn power that they need, obviously, since we saw from Global Championships this weekend. So if we're thinking about strengthening our spawn situations, maybe Malibuca's not the choice here, but who knows? Trios is obviously not a very off-spawn heavy type of game mode. You want to be uncontested because the fights take so long, so maybe not that much of an issue to think about that deeply into that in that situation. But when it comes to late game fragging power and pop-up potential, the Malibuca is definitely that guy who will clutch out the last few bits of placing points and get you those eliminations that you require. Moving on to the other side, we have the Germans. Reason, Vidil, and Giannis have apparently been said to be trioing together. Obviously, this is the OG trio that got so close to winning FNCS trios back when Hen, Chap, and Giannis won, only to be destroyed by a game crash, I believe, in the last game. So, obviously, Vidil and Giannis won duo FNCS together. Reason, Vidil have been playing together for the entire chapter, and this seems like the most obvious of the German trios for Reason Video to play with, because they have that chemistry from before. And obviously with Janus now being left out of some of the other German speaking trios, this makes the most sense as a trio that I think has a lot of potential to do well. And we're only like 6 trios in, but it always seems like we have some very, very good trios in total so far. And speaking of good trios, the next one is Vico, Flickzy, and Chap have already tweeted and confirmed that they will be playing trios together. Now obviously Chap is the rookie on the block. He just got a 6th place over Global Championships. He got a second, and now 6th, obviously at Globals. One of the best rookies in the game so far, with a lot of controversy, but I think all of that controversy has been slammed down now that he plays super well at Globals. Obviously a different type of role now because he's been playing with Teeny the whole time, so it might be interesting to see how he slots into that Vico and Flickzy duo, but that is a duo full of aggression. There's always been parallels made between Vico, Flickzy, and Peterbot and Pollo in NA, that they're the EU version of Peterbot and Pollo, but Vico, Flickzy, Chap is just another tier above in terms of fragging potential. We know how good Chap is, and with the experience he has now under his belt with a 2nd and a 2nd and a 6th, he's definitely a very competent trio player as well. And now working together potentially with their coach Razuru, it's going to mold him into an even better player potentially. But one of the things that we always worry about when it comes to trios is, do you have sometimes too much fragging power? Do you have too many cooks in the kitchen potentially who are going to make too many plays, which might ruin your game plan? Because trios obviously is a game of consistency. Previous seasons of trios, you want to play your mats out. It's basically a lot of heal off as well, usually depending on the meta, so you can't make mistakes in that sense. We have teams like CZB, Nathan, and Jakey potentially being able to play together. We have Mix and Blaha and Hori together. We had rumors of Ritual, Cooper, and Miro potentially playing together. We saw Cooper and Miro play the duo cash cup together. Ritual and Reet have also split from what we've seen. We've seen Clix and Reet playing together in duo cash cups this past weekend. So Ritual, Cooper, and Miro does make some sort of sense in this situation. And speaking of Clix, we have Clix, who apparently is looking for one with Reet in trios, but there's another rumor floating around that potentially Clix might be trying to play Brazil FNCS. Now, it's not confirmed that this is actually the case, but there was a clip from Clix's stream the other week where we heard Feldy talk in the background. Feldy is Clix's manager, talking about potentially playing with King and Phaser. Then Clix said something about it, and the reason behind this was that Clix potentially wants to play with King and Phaser in Brazil so that he can guarantee his first FNCS win in Brazil, and then guarantee himself a spot at globals in the first season, which pretty much opens himself up for the rest of the year to get uncontested draw spots so that we don't have a repeat of the vending machine situation of 2024 and the grief situations in NA. Now, whether or not that's actually worthwhile to do, I am not too sure, right? I mean, if Clix finally gets his FNCS win, fair play to him, but at the same time, do we really want to win our first FNCS in Brazil? No disrespect, but Blood Extras qualified duo Cash Cup finals in Brazil, so it's always going to be a chip on his shoulder if that does end up happening. Seems super unlikely, but we have seen Clix pretty much raring to leave NA for one season at least to try out different regions. There's been rumors of him trying to go to EU potentially. For a duo, if it was duos this season, if there was duos next chapter, but obviously now that it's trios, a lot might change in terms of his agenda. Speaking of big duos, we have Mongraal and Savage, who a lot of people have spewed out rumors of who they're potentially going to be able to play with. Clix got thrown around, which was obviously a bit of an impression from we saw on the TikTok and Twitters. It's probably not going to end up happening considering their current situation. We've seen some names being thrown around in terms of who Mongraal and Savage could play with, and I think two names come to mind that make the most sense. First being Pink. Obviously, Pink hasn't had the best of year less, hasn't had the best chapter so far in chapter 5, but he's also been trying to transition a little bit more into content. So now it's a choice for Pink to make whether or not he wants to go more into content and less into competitive, even though Mongraal and Savage have been doing super well this recently, and with trios being a blank slate, we might see them pop off even more. Realistically, Mongraal and Savage right now in trios probably aren't a contender to win the FNCS, but more of a top 5 to top 10 type of team. Is that the type of sacrifice Pink wants to make, or does he want to try to find a trio that he thinks he can win FNCS with? Or is Mongraal and Savage that trio he could win an FNCS with? You just never know, especially with metas changing. We haven't played trios for 3 years, so we're all going back to something new. So maybe Mongraal and Savage might be the best trio potentially. You just don't know. The other name being thrown around that makes the most sense, and apparently he has shown interest in wanting to play with Mongraal and Savage, is Marius. Marius obviously very close to Mongraal and Savage when it comes to his content creation career. He's been trying to transition from professional play to content creation as well, streaming, even with Facecam recently. It makes sense that Marius could fit into that trio. Definitely adds a bit of fragging power to that trio, which they do need sometimes. And also with a bit of experience, Marius potentially being coached as well could mold this trio into something good. Then we have three very good fighters in one trio, molding and growing together, and Marius obviously growing his own social channels would make a lot of sense. In terms of other smaller news, Noah and Focus are playing duos together, so maybe they're going to be able to form a trio potentially. Apparently, Alex and Muzz are looking for one. Alex is now guaranteed to move back to NA for next season. Worthy is not going with him, so Alex is taking that leap of faith to go play NA FNCS by himself, and he is looking for a person to play with. So it would make sense Alex and Muzz will play together. Obviously, both being the OCE boys, looking for one. Has a lot of potential. That is a fragging duo for sure, and with Alex doing decently well off spawn against Malibuca at Globus this weekend, he might be someone some of these teams might be able to pick up. On top of that, Acorn apparently is looking for one with Canada, the Dignitas boys together, and from Levin, we heard on the Fantasia podcast, from the podcast I am on, apparently the team that plays fourth at Globus, I believe, Ping and Wox, will not be playing trios together either. So those are some of the trios that we've seen and confirmed so far that we've spoken to. There's obviously going to be a lot more rumors coming around, but the biggest question now is going to be, is now that we have 5 months to go until trios, it's going to be a long time before we see any of these trios in action. Now, me personally, I feel like Epic might have announced trios a little bit too soon, because now every duo tournament just feels crappy in comparison to the prospect of potentially trios being back very soon. My personal hope is they just remove reload cups altogether, start running some trio cash cups so we can see some of these trios in actions, get the hype rolling for next year, but obviously that's probably not going to happen. And as we have trio scrims rolling out potentially in the next few months, then we'll start seeing some confirmed trios, and a lot of people splitting, because realistically you can't call your trio 5 months in advance because a lot can change. If you guys enjoyed this yap session, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.